October 2025. The world stands at a crossroads, holding its breath as a new chapter in global economics begins to unfold. The air is thick with anticipation, and uncertainty ripples through financial capitals from New York to Shanghai. In a move that stuns both allies and rivals, President Donald Trump steps up to the podium and announces a sweeping 100% tariff on all Chinese imports. The message is clear: the era of compromise is over, and the gloves are off. Newsrooms scramble, analysts are left speechless, and the world's attention is riveted on Washington. The impact is immediate and dramatic. Overnight, the price of every product made in China is set to double for American consumers and businesses. Global markets reel as investors rush to make sense of the chaos. Stock exchanges from London to Tokyo plunge into turmoil, with billions wiped off in mere hours. The shockwaves are felt not just in boardrooms, but in the homes of ordinary people worldwide. But what exactly is a tariff? At its core, it's a tax imposed on imported goods, designed to make foreign products more expensive and give domestic industries a fighting chance. For decades, tariffs have been wielded as both shield and sword in international trade disputes. Yet this moment is about far more than economics. It marks a dramatic escalation in a rivalry that has been simmering for years, fueled by suspicion, competition, and a struggle for global influence. The world watches as two superpowers square off, their relationship more strained than ever. The US-China trade war, which first erupted in 2018, has been a saga of tit-for-tat tariffs, tense negotiations, and uneasy truces. Each side has tried to outmaneuver the other, with moments of hope quickly dashed by renewed hostilities. The world has grown accustomed to this uneasy dance, but now, the stakes have never been higher. The latest truce, already fragile, shatters over issues that have long defied resolution: allegations of intellectual property theft, persistent trade imbalances, and an intensifying race for technological supremacy. Behind closed doors, negotiators struggle to find common ground, but the gulf only widens. The Trump administration frames this drastic action as a necessary response to a provocative move by Beijing, one that they claim directly threatens US national security. The rhetoric is sharper, the stakes higher, and the room for error vanishingly small. At the heart of the crisis lies a critical resource: rare earth minerals. China, with its near monopoly on these essential materials, is accused of weaponizing its control, disrupting global supply chains, and leaving the US with little choice but to retaliate. The world's technological future suddenly hangs in the balance. And this is no longer a debate about trade deficits or balance sheets. It's a battle for economic survival, with factories closing, workers sent home, and small businesses struggling to stay afloat. The ripple effects threaten to reshape entire industries and livelihoods. With trillions of dollars and millions of jobs hanging in the balance, governments, corporations, and ordinary citizens brace for impact. The uncertainty is palpable, and the sense of crisis is global. The chessboard of international trade hasn't just been flipped, it's been set ablaze, and the world is left to wonder what will rise from the ashes. The resource at the heart of this crisis, it's not oil, gold, or even silicon. It's something far less known, but far more critical to the modern world: rare earth elements, 17 unique metals that are absolutely essential for the technology we use every day. They're the hidden backbone of everything from smartphones and electric vehicles, to wind turbines, advanced batteries, and even fighter jets. China has spent decades building up its rare earth industry. Today, it controls nearly 70% of global mining, and a staggering 90% of processing capacity. This dominance makes China the undisputed rare earth superpower, with the ability to influence prices and supply worldwide. In late 2025, Beijing took a bold step. The government tightened its grip, requiring foreign companies to get official approval for any product containing Chinese-sourced rare earths. This wasn't just a bureaucratic hurdle, it was a strategic move with global consequences. Suddenly, China had unprecedented leverage over global supply chains. With a single policy, it could effectively veto vast swathes of manufacturing, from consumer electronics to high-tech defense systems, sending shockwaves through boardrooms and factories worldwide. For the United States, this was more than just an economic threat. It was a direct challenge to national security, impacting not only consumer goods, but also the country's military readiness and technological edge. The Pentagon relies heavily on these rare earth elements for critical defense technologies, everything from missile guidance systems to stealth aircraft and advanced communications. What had once been a theoretical risk, discussed in policy circles and think tanks, suddenly became a real and urgent danger. The world was watching, and the stakes had never been higher. The US response had to be immediate and forceful. Leaders scrambled to find solutions, knowing that the future of technology, security, and economic stability was on the line. The White House declared a national emergency, framing the 100% tariff as a defensive necessity. Commerce Secretary J.D. Vance called China's rare earth dominance an existential threat to U.S. security. The administration's goal: force American companies to reshore manufacturing and end reliance on China. Officials warned of further escalation if China retaliated, hinting at export controls on U.S. tech and finance. President Trump, meanwhile, tried to calm markets with mixed messages, projecting strength while promising everything would be fine. The U.S. was playing hardball, but the risks were enormous. The world watched, uncertain who would blink first. China's response was swift and strategic. Beijing imposed new port fees on U.S. ships and slapped a 20% tariff on American soybeans, targeting a key Trump voter base. The agricultural blow was devastating. China had been the largest buyer of U.S. soybeans. By hitting both shipping and farming, China maximized its leverage and political impact. The message: for every U.S. move, China would strike back just as hard. American farmers became pawns in a global power struggle. Beijing hoped to turn U.S. domestic pressure against the White House. The trade war was now a two-front battle with no easy exit. The markets reacted instantly and brutally. The S&P 500 plunged 2.7% in a single day, the worst in 6 months. In days, $1.65 trillion in U.S. market value vanished, more than the annual GDP of Australia. These weren't just numbers, they were retirement savings, pensions, and investments for millions of Americans. Companies like Apple and Walmart faced soaring costs, or the prospect of passing them to consumers. Exporters lost access to China, their biggest market. Investors feared the trade war could tip the U.S. and global economies into recession. Confidence and capital were the first casualties. The price of escalation was immediate and steep. For U.S. soybean farmers, the trade war was a personal disaster. China had bought over half of all U.S. soybean exports, $24.5 billion in 2024 alone. When China halted orders and imposed tariffs, prices collapsed by 40%. Many farmers faced losses on every acre, with bankruptcies surging 50% from the previous year. Family farms, some generations old, were pushed to the brink. The Trump administration promised aid funded by tariff revenue, but details were vague and relief slow to arrive. Farmers were left in limbo, casualties of a policy meant to protect them. Their livelihoods became bargaining chips in a global standoff. The human cost of the trade war was heartbreakingly real. As the US and China clashed, other nations seized the moment. Brazil and Argentina quickly filled the soybean gap, capturing market share the US had spent decades building. Argentina even suspended its export tax, making its crops more attractive to China. The shift wasn't just in agriculture. Vietnam, Malaysia, and Mexico saw manufacturing booms as US companies sought tariff-free alternatives. The Trump administration hoped to bring jobs back to America, but global supply chains simply rerouted. The real winners were America's competitors, who gained new markets and investments. The trade war redrew the map of global commerce. While the giants fought, others quietly prospered. For ordinary Americans, the trade war brought a wave of uncertainty and frustration. Suddenly, higher prices appeared everywhere, on everything from electronics and smartphones to basic household appliances and even children's toys. The 100% tariff was paid up front by U.S. importers, who had little choice but to pass those extra costs directly to consumers. For families already struggling to make ends meet, it felt like a new tax on daily life, one that hit every trip to the store and every monthly bill. Groceries, clothing, and even school supplies became more expensive, forcing many to cut back or search for cheaper alternatives. The $1.65 trillion market loss didn't just affect Wall Street, it hit Main Street too. Shrinking retirement accounts, college savings, and investments for millions of Americans. Layoffs and bankruptcies rippled through agriculture and industries tied to China, leaving farmers and factory workers facing an uncertain future. The administration's goal of reshoring jobs was slow and uncertain, and for many the promise of new opportunities felt distant and out of reach. As the months dragged on, Americans faced higher costs, fewer job prospects, and a growing sense of anxiety about what might come next. The future was unclear. Would the US and China find a way to de-escalate, or would both sides dig in for a long, painful standoff? The stakes were enormous, with the global order and the livelihoods of millions hanging in the balance. Every new headline brought fresh worries about the economy, jobs, and the future of American families. For now, Americans paid the price for a conflict far beyond their control. Feeling the impact in their wallets and in their daily lives, the hope that resolution would come before the damage became permanent, and that the lessons learned would help guide the nation toward a more stable and prosperous future.